Hi everybody, and welcome back to Virtual Storytime at the Castle Shannon Library. This is also a very special story time because this is our preschool story time in association with the Allegheny County Library Association Summer Reading Program. Because the Summer Reading Program theme is Imagine Your Story, and at Castle Shannon we've been doing an alphabet series for our story times, these two came together perfectly. It is the letter R today for our story time and the theme Imagine Your Story. It just made sense to read Little Red Riding Hood. So this version of Little Red Riding Hood is retold by Josephine Evitz Secker and illustrated by Nicoletta, I think it says Cece, Socoli. Our sticker is covering up her last name on the front, so I had to read it on the side. So it just made sense because we're on letter R, Red Riding Hood. The summer reading theme is Imagine Your Story, which is all about fairy tales. So we are going to read this version of Little Red Riding Hood today. And we're also going to do a craft and make little paper baskets like Little Red Riding Hood carries her basket to Grandma's house. So this is this version of Little Red Riding Hood. In a cozy cottage on the outskirts of a sheltered village, there once lived a little girl who was quiet and good. No one noticed her until one day she appeared in a bright red cape with ribbons to fasten the hood under her chin. Now people turned their heads on the village street, and everyone delighted to see her. From that day on, she was known as Little Red Riding Hood. Wearing her bright cape, Little Red Riding Hood loved to visit her grandmother, and the old woman always looked forward to her coming, for she lived all alone in the middle of the forest beyond the village. It was she who had made the cape, stitch by stitch, for her darling granddaughter's birthday. One morning, when baking was finished, Little Red Riding Hood's mother suggested that since her grandmother was sick, Little Red Riding Hood must take her some fresh bread and some new butter and some sweet elderberry wine. As she filled the round basket and covered it with a white linen cloth, she said, "Now, Little Red Riding Hood, be a good girl and do exactly as I say. Follow the path from our cottage to Granny's without straying from it for one moment. Go straight there, and after a short visit, come home directly, well before dusk. Walk very carefully with the basket and watch your feet so you don't trip over. Don't pry into Granny's things and show her what a well-behaved little girl you are." Little Red Riding Hood nodded, promising to obey. She set off cautiously, making sure that the wine did not splash about in the flask. The journey usually took no more than half an hour, so she could reach the cottage by noon. She walked steadily until she entered the cool forest. Then she slowed down and pulled her red cloak about her. Just as she did so, a big wolf appeared on the path, blocking her way. His eyes gleamed and his long teeth sparkled as he greeted her. "Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood." The young girl knew nothing about wolves, so she answered politely, "Good morning to you, Mr. Wolf." "Where are you going on such a lovely spring day?" he asked. "To visit my sick grandmother," she replied. "I wonder what secret things you were hiding in your round basket," he teased. "Oh, some freshly baked bread, some new butter, and some sweet elderberry wine," she offered. "I helped my mother make them." Her red cloak shone for a moment, caught in a ray of sunlight through the green leaves. "I do hope that you don't have to carry that heavy basket a long way. Where does Granny live?" the cunning wolf inquired. "Not far. It's the only cottage for miles, besides the 3 oaks sheltered by a hazel hedge. You must know it." Licking his lips, the happy wolf offered to keep her company for a while, and they set off together in silence. Suddenly, the wolf stopped, pricked up his ears, and exclaimed, "Listen! How beautifully the birds are singing this morning." Little Red Riding Hood also stopped to listen. She had never noticed birdsong in the woods before. How strange! She must tell grandmother about it. The wily wolf smiled and they set off again, deep in thought. Watching her out of the corner of his eye, the wolf soon stopped again when they came to a fork in the path. "Do you ever take flowers to Granny?" he asked, and before she could reply, he pointed up the left-hand path, saying, "If you go that way, you will find a forest clearing full of flowers, red and white and oh, have you never seen them? Then you must run there straight away and pick a posy for Granny." Little Red Riding Hood gazed to the left and gazed to the right and back to the left path, thinking how much she would love to pick flowers. Then she said, "If I put my basket down here at the fork in the path, I can come back to it and easily find my way again to grandmother's house." The wolf was delighted and encouraged her. "Yes, of course, and I'll run and let Granny know that you are on your way." So Little Red Riding Hood went up the left path a little way, and seeing the promised flowers, she ran over to them and started to pick some, straying farther and farther from the path and deeper into the forest. She had never even known such a pleasure as she reached out after each bright flower. She looked like a flower herself in the midst of the clearing in her bright red cape. So thought the wolf as he watched her, and then, with a grin, he dropped down on his forepaws and ran off at high speed, straight to the old lady's cottage behind the hazel hedge. The wolf knocked at the door loudly, rousing the grandmother from her nap. "Who is there?" she asked. The wily old wolf whispered, "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood, with a gift for you." So the old lady called out, "Then come in, my dear. The door isn't locked, just lift the latch." No sooner was the door open than the wolf jumped in, bounded across the room to the bed, and devoured the weak old woman. He laughed as he dressed up in her largest nightgown and tried to pull her nightcap over his head. Then he lay down in her bed, drew the curtains around him, and waited. The sun climbed high in the sky as Little Red Riding Hood picked flowers, and it was casting short shadows when she found that she had gathered so many that she couldn't possibly carry them all. She took what she could and found her way back to her basket and the path to her grandmother's house. So she ran so hard that the wine splashed high up the flask, and when she reached the cottage, she dashed straight for the door had been left open, ready for her. She rushed over to her grandmother's bed, quite out of breath, calling out, "Granny, Granny, look what I brought for you." But her grandmother did not reply, even as Little Red Riding Hood pulled back the curtains. No delighted Granny sat up or stretched out her arms to welcome her dear child. In fact, her grandmother could scarcely be seen under her bonnet with the sheets pulled up right to her chin. So Little Red Riding Hood lifted the covers. Imagine her surprise. "Oh, grandmother, what big ears you have!" "All the better to hear you with, my dear." "Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have!" "All the better to see you with, my dear." "Oh, grandmother, what big hands you have!" "All the better to hold you with, my dear." "Oh, grandmother, what terrible teeth you have!" "All the better to eat you with, my dear." So cried the wolf as he pounced on Little Red Riding Hood. He gobbled her up. Bloated and exhausted, the wolf fell back on the bed in a loud, snoring sleep. Just then, the woodcutter was passing by the open door. He heard an unfamiliar sound and came closer. Amazed by the thundering snore, he peered into the cottage to see how the old lady was. There on the bed lay the big greedy beast that he had been pursuing for a long time. He raised his axe to make an end of him, but as he did so, he saw the huge belly of the wolf move and guessed what had been swallowed. Quickly he drew his knife from its sheath and cut open the belly with care. Immediately he recognized the red cape. Then a white little face appeared and a very frightened girl jumped out, followed by her trembling grandmother. Neither the old woman nor the young girl were hurt, but they were relieved to be safely back in daylight. "How dark and fearful it is inside the wolf," Little Red Riding Hood exclaimed. Then, seeing that he had been cut wide open, she had an idea. "I'll fill up that big dark belly with rocks." The woodcutter helped her carry sharp rocks from the pile under the oak trees, and before the wolf could wake up, they had stuffed him and stitched him up again. As soon as the wolf awoke, he sprang up from the bed and crashed down onto the floor, dead as a stone. The woodcutter returned to the village, and dusk fell. Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother sat down together to feast on the fresh bread, the new butter, and the sweet elderberry wine while they talked of their day's adventures. Little Red Riding Hood told her Grammy about the bird song and the beautiful flowers, and as she shared these good things, she wondered whether she would ever meet another wolf in the forest, and if so, what would she do then? And that is the end of our story. Next, we are going to teach you how to make the Little Red Riding Hood paper baskets. So this is gonna require some parents or older siblings help, but I know that our preschoolers can do it because you guys are very smart. So the first thing that you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna get some brown paper or any color that you want your basket to be, but I think Little Red Riding Hood's basket was brown, so that's why I used brown. And you wanna cut a square that is 15 centimeters by 15 centimeters. So Miss Christy's not very good at measuring, even with a ruler, but I did 15 centimeters by 15 centimeters. I drew it on a piece of paper, and then I cut my square out. And then you also want to cut a strip like this that is 25 centimeters long and 2.5 centimeters across. So you can use the same piece of construction paper to make both of them. I was able to do that. Then before you do anything else, you want to decorate your basket and your handle. So you can design them with whatever you want. I use Sharpie paint markers, but you can use markers, crayons. You can glue stuff onto it if you want, however you want to decorate your basket. Then the next thing that you are going to do, you're going to want to work on the side that's blank when you're doing this next part. So you are going to cut slits into your square at each corner. You want to cut them pretty far to the middle so that you can kind of bend your basket around. Then what you do, and it might be hard to show you this up here, you're going to want to fold one of the triangles into the inside because this bottom part is where you're going to be folding to. So you're going to want to fold this part up like this, and then you're going to want to take this corner and fold it over like this so that they kind of come together. You're going to want to do that same thing on this side, so that you have the two outside sides meeting in the middle and they folded over that bottom triangle. So it recommends that you staple them shut. I'm actually gonna tape mine so that the two outside pieces get held together. And then you wanna put one side of your handle in there so that it's behind everything. Let me see if I can flip it so you can see it. So your handle's gonna be behind everything. And that is when you might wanna come in with the stapler and you wanna staple all four of those layers together. So you wanna make sure that you have the handle, the back part of the triangle, and the two front parts of the triangle together, all stapled. That's definitely something that you're gonna need a grown-up's help for. you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. And I do have to tell you that the second side is a little bit trickier. So you're going to fold this up, and then you're going to fold both sides around it. Oh, this time, see, I made another one, and it was a lot trickier with the second side, but I'm not having quite as much of a problem this time. Imagine that. So I'm going to tape them together again, just to kind of help myself out a little bit, so that the two outer layers are at least stuck together. Then you're going to fold the handle part over, slide your stapler in there, and make sure you get all 4 layers stapled together, and you have your little basket. And if you want to make it look like a little Red Riding Hood basket, you can take a little square of cloth, and maybe if I fold this, it'll look a little nicer. You can put a little square of cloth in there to make it really look like a little Red Riding Hood basket. So I'm also going to have instructions on how to do that in words, because sometimes for some people it is easier to read the instructions rather than to watch a video. I read instructions to help me do this the first time because it works easier for me. But everybody's different. So hopefully you enjoyed our little Red Riding Hood story and you enjoyed the craft. Hopefully this was a good craft for our preschoolers to do either with parents or older siblings. And we can't wait to see what other fun things you do to imagine your story for summer reading. We hope you're all enjoying summer vacation and summer reading. Have a good day.